The wind in Zone 12 always smelled like rust and static, like the air itself had been scorched and stitched back together wrong. It howled low between hollowed buildings and snapped at loose wiring like angry teeth. No one wanted to be stationed this deep into the wastes, but Renhalvik wasn't most people. He crouched by the edge of a broken filtration tower, wrench in hand, cursing at a bolt that refused to come loose. His enviro mask itched under his chin, and dust clung to his jacket like mold to bread. This part of the old neutral zones had been abandoned for nearly a decade, just a rotting corridor between exodus routes and failed colonies. Most techs stayed away. Ren came here on contract. Not military anymore, hadn't been since the Lysoran collapse, just a freelance mechanic with a beat-up rover and a stubborn sense of obligation. These outposts still needed water recyclers, solar nodes, and air converters. If someone didn't keep the systems limping, the last few hundred squatters and burnouts here would drop dead in silence. He wiped his brow, adjusted his toolkit, and stood. That's when he saw her. At first he thought it was debris, a collapsed COM-10 maybe, or the carcass of a scavenger drone half-sunk in the mud beside a chemical fire barrel. But something about the shape arrested him. It had limbs. Curved. Still. Almost too still. Ren squinted through the fogged lens of his visor. It wasn't a drone. Or a corpse. It was a woman. No, a girl. Her figure curled unnaturally, half covered in blackened sludge and ash. Her fur shimmered beneath the grime, violet with darker stripes running along her thighs and arms. Not human. Not local. Something else entirely. He took a slow step forward. Ren knelt beside her, the squish of his boots in the toxic mud the only sound besides the distant thrum of malfunctioning air turbines. Her body was small, slender beneath the grime, but not frail. There was strength hidden beneath the emaciation, like a blade dulled but not broken. Her fur, matted and streaked with filth, was undeniably purple. Vivid, otherworldly. The kind of hue no natural-born species ever grew in this quadrant. Her face was partly buried in her arms, but he could see enough to know she wasn't human. Not fully. Not even close. Her ears were long, triangular, and twitching faintly with every gust of wind, tipped with darker fur. A faint pattern, something like ceremonial markings or maybe natural striping, curved across her cheeks and jaw. Her tail lay limp behind her, half submerged in the reeking sludge. Ren glanced around. No one came forward. No one even looked in his direction. A few squatters eyed him from behind torn sheets and rusted barricades, then turned away just as quickly. Guilt, fear, shame, it all read the same in their postures. She yours? He asked no one in particular, but no one answered. Of course not. No one claimed things like her. Not here. Not anymore. He crouched lower and touched her shoulder gently. Hey, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Can you hear me? No response. Her eyes didn't move. She didn't flinch. He touched her neck, just below the jawline. A pulse. Weak. Slow. But there. You're alive, he murmured. For a moment, he just stared at her, at the burn-in scars on her exposed flank, the chipped metal collar hanging loose around her throat. Some kind of tracking unit cracked. Disabled. She wasn't just forgotten. She'd been thrown away. Ren exhaled slowly. Then he slipped his arms beneath her limp form and lifted her carefully from the mud. She didn't resist. Didn't move at all. Just breathed. Ren carried her in silence, her body feather-light against his chest, her soaked fur clinging to his jacket. The stink of Zone 12 clung to both of them, burned metal, ammonia, and old rain, but her scent was different beneath it all. Subtle, earthy. A little like crushed lavender mixed with soldered wires. Alien, but strangely pleasant. His rover stood just a block away, hidden behind a makeshift barricade of old crates and fencing. It wasn't much to look at, patched plating, dented frame, streaked windows, but it ran. That's all that mattered. He kicked open the side hatch with his boot and ducked inside, cradling her close as he laid her onto the padded rear bench. She didn't stir, just folded slightly toward the heat vent like a leaf reaching for light. Wren shut the hatch and wiped his hands on a grease rag before climbing into the driver's seat. The engine rumbled to life with a cough and a groan. The cabin lights flickered before settling into a dull amber glow. The girl, creature, whatever she was, remained perfectly still. Wren drove. The wastes blurred past the viewport in streaks of rust and neon fog. Towering heaps of old war scraps stood silent and half-sunken along the road, relics of 100 failed battles. No patrols, no checkpoints, not out here. Just the broken and the forgotten. He glanced in the rearview mirror. She hadn't moved. Her breathing was shallower now but steady. Her fur, where it wasn't caked in grime, still shimmered faintly in the passing lights. She looked peaceful, like something carved from moonlight and soot. "I don't know what you are," he muttered, "but I know you don't belong here." The drive to his outpost took nearly an hour. Wren's shelter was hidden within the collapsed remains of an old mining station. Reinforced doors, solar panels stitched together from 3 different brands, and just enough insulation to survive the freeze cycles. It wasn't paradise, but it was warm. Safe. His. He pulled into the garage bay and shut the Rover down. Then he stood and turned to face her again. Her lips had parted slightly, her breath fogging faintly in the cold air. He didn't know why, but something about that made his chest tighten. "All right," he said gently, stepping forward. "Let's get you inside." The airlock hissed as Wren punched in the override code. The outer door slid open with a reluctant groan, revealing the main chamber of his outpost, a low-ceiling room lit by dim strip lights and cluttered with toolboxes, spare panels, wiring coils, and salvage tech. A heating unit rattled weakly in the corner, fighting off the chill that never quite left these walls. He brought her in carefully, her weight barely noticeable in his arms, and laid her down on the padded emergency cot tucked against the wall near the heater. Her ears twitched slightly at the temperature change, but she didn't stir. Wren sat back on his heels, catching his breath. His heart was pounding harder than he expected. "What the hell am I doing?" he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow with a trembling hand. "You're gonna get me killed, aren't you?" Still, she lay quiet. He stood, crossed the room, and began adjusting the old med scanner he'd rigged into a corner panel. It flickered, buzzed, then finally blinked to life in a weak teal light. He returned to her side and aimed the scanner at her upper torso, letting it hum as it swept over her. The results rolled in slowly: body temperature dangerously low, mild dehydration, 2 fractured ribs, older injuries. But the most alarming part was the neural activity, elevated stress markers, irregular synaptic patterns. Someone had tampered with her biology. Deeply. He stared at the scanner in silence. "What were they doing to you?" He set the scanner aside and gently peeled away a torn scrap of fabric near her shoulder. Beneath it, the skin, fur really, was marred by circular burns barely healed. Some looked like restraints. Others tools. He swallowed hard and turned away, fury bubbling low in his gut. Wren moved to the storage locker and pulled out a thermal blanket, a canteen, and one of his old shirts. Cleanest he had. Then he knelt beside her again. "Hey," he whispered, brushing a lock of damp hair from her face. "If you're in there, if you can hear me, I'm not gonna hurt you. You're safe now. All right?" She didn't respond, but her breathing deepened. He tucked the blanket gently around her, set the canteen near the cot, and turned down the lights. The room dimmed to a soft amber haze. Outside, the wastes howled. But inside, for the first time in what felt like forever, there was silence. And it didn't feel empty. Morning in the wastes wasn't marked by sunrises, just a slow shift in the haze from black to dull gray. Wren stirred early, his body used to the outpost chill. He pulled on his jacket and made a slow circuit of the compound, checking the solar inputs and battery levels. The wind had knocked out one of the external panels again. He made a note to repair it later. Inside, it was still warm. The heater buzzed softly, and the light strips had switched to their lowest cycle. He walked over to the cot quietly, half expecting her to be gone. But she was still there, curled tighter now, like a child tucked against the cold, with the blanket pulled high around her shoulders. Her ears twitched at some faint sound, maybe the door, maybe him, but she didn't wake. He crouched beside her again and just watched for a moment. Her features were less sunken today, her breathing more even. He caught a glimpse of her tail, still caked in filth but no longer limp. "Guess you made it through the night," he whispered. He stood, moved to the far end of the room, and powered up the water rig. The makeshift shower station was a retrofitted sanitation pod from a derelict freighter. The plumbing rattled as warm water trickled through the recycled pipes. Ren adjusted the heat manually, letting steam build until the temperature was safe enough for use. He turned and saw her sitting up. Not all the way. Just a slow, careful rise to her elbows, eyes half-lidded but focused on the sound of the running water. Her gaze was sharp, too sharp for someone still weak. Not fearful, but wary. Calculating. Ren held up both hands, voice soft. "It's clean. I set it warm. You don't have to, but it might help." She blinked slowly, then turned her head toward the water. Something shifted in her posture. A memory, maybe. Or longing. Ren stepped back and picked up the clean shirt and another towel. He set them just inside the shower stall and pulled the curtain halfway. "Privacy's yours," he said. "I'll stay over here." He moved to the workbench and busied himself with meaningless tasks. Behind him, the silence stretched. Then he heard movement. A step. Another. The soft pad of bare feet on metal grating. The curtain closed fully. Water flowed. He didn't turn around. But he could hear the quiet sounds of her breathing shift, staggered, wet gasps that turned into soft sobs. Not a fear. Something else. Release. Enrin just sat, staring at a broken circuit board, pretending not to hear her cry. Ren stayed at the workbench, fingers loosely resting on a broken coil he hadn't touched in 20 minutes. Behind him, the shower hissed steadily, steam thickening the air, curling through the vents and coating the walls with warmth. He could hear her breathing shift, slower now. The occasional drop of water as it ran down fur. The rustle of fabric. He didn't move. When the curtain finally pulled back, he stood without turning. Gave her space. She stepped softly across the floor, wrapped in the towel he'd left. The clean shirt hung from her arms, oversized but dry. She paused near the heater, rubbing one arm slowly with her other hand, eyes flicking toward him. He saw her then, really saw her. Her fur was violet with deeper plum hues at the tips of her ears and tail. The purple shimmered when she moved, as if the light bent slightly to complement her. The scars were still there. Some faint and healed, others fresh and angry, but they no longer defined her. She looked like someone slowly waking from a long nightmare. She met his gaze. It wasn't defiance in her eyes. Or submission. Just observation. "You warm enough?" he asked gently. She nodded. A single, silent motion. "Good." He crossed the room to the food unit and pulled out 2 ration packs. Hydrated them with the last of his clean water and handed one over. She accepted it without touching his hand, though her fingers hovered close enough he felt their warmth. She sat on the cot again, more upright this time. Alert. Watching. "I'm Rin," he said, as he sat across from her on the crate he used as a stool. "I'm not with the military. I'm not with anyone. Just a mechanic." No response. "I found you in Zone 12. Half buried. Folks there were too scared to even look at you." Still, she said nothing. But her ears twitched at that. He nodded to the collar still hanging loose around her neck. "Whatever they did to you, whoever they were, I don't care. I just care that you're alive." For the first time, she blinked slowly and looked down at the collar. Then, with careful fingers, she pulled it over her head and let it fall to the floor with a soft clink. Ren leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to tell me anything," Not yet. Not ever if you don't want. But if you need a place to rest, it's yours. She looked at him again, and this time, her eyes lingered. They were bright silver, reflective, almost like a mirror, and for a moment they shimmered. Then softly she spoke. My name is Vasha. The sound of her voice, soft, uncertain, but steady, hung in the air like a breath held too long. Ren sat motionless, afraid to shatter it. Vasha, he repeated, the syllables rolling gently off his tongue. That's a strong name. She looked down, almost embarrassed, as if speaking it aloud had cost her something. Her ears twitched, and her tail slowly curled around her legs, a silent motion of protection. I didn't think you'd talk, Ren said carefully. I figured maybe you couldn't. Vasha's silver eyes lifted again. I wasn't sure I remembered how, she admitted. He smiled at that. Not mockingly, just a soft, genuine curve of his lips. Well, you did fine. She didn't smile back, but her shoulders loosened. They ate in silence after that, each wrapped in their own quiet. Ren watched her carefully without staring, trying to take in everything now that the storm of first impressions had settled. The way her fingers gripped the ration pack, precise but cautious. The subtle motions of her tail when something startled her. The way she kept glancing at the water rig, as if the memory of the warmth still clung to her bones. After a while, she spoke again. This place. It's yours? Yeah. More or less. I built it out of scraps and guilt. He tapped the side of the heater. Most of it doesn't work half the time, but it's home. She looked around, her eyes pausing on the half-disassembled drone on the workbench, the scattered wires, the patched walls. It's quiet. Best thing about it, Ren agreed. No one to bother you out here. Just wind and ghosts. She nodded slowly, and he saw something shift in her eyes. Not fear. Not quite sadness. Recognition. I was left in the rain for 3 nights, she said softly, as if reciting a fact she no longer needed to feel. They thought I was dead. Or maybe they just didn't care. Ren's knuckles tightened around the edge of the crate. I'm not gonna ask who, he said after a moment. Not unless you want to tell me. Vasha didn't answer. She just stared at the floor, her breath steady, her body still. But the tension that had once made her feel like a coiled spring was unwinding. She was still afraid. But not of him. That night, Ren gave her the cot and set up a blanket for himself on the floor near the heater. He didn't argue when she tried to protest, not with words, but with the way she hesitated, glancing between him and the floor. She seemed unsure of what she deserved, and that alone told him more than he wanted to know. Look, he said, easing down on the thermal mat. I've slept in worse places. You're not taking anything from me. Vasha sat on the edge of the cot, watching him like she wasn't sure he was real. Her long violet tail curled around her feet again, and she tucked the blanket close to her chest with small, careful movements. She still flinched a little when the heater clanked from the power cycle. But not as much. Ren didn't ask questions. Not about where she came from. Not about who hurt her. He let her exist in the quiet, in the simple warmth of survival. She needed that more than anything. Eventually, her breathing slowed. Her head rested lightly against the wall. Her ears relaxed from their constant alert angle, and her tail stopped moving. Ren lay on his side, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Why her? Why leave someone, so clearly intelligent and rare in a place like Zone 12? Someone with cybernetic scars, restraint burns, and eyes that looked like they'd seen every terrible thing the galaxy had to offer. Someone still fighting to stay soft. He closed his eyes and let the dull buzz of the heater wash over him. Some time later, he wasn't sure how long, he stirred at the sound of movement. A faint rustle of fabric, the whisper of claws on metal. He opened one eye and found Vasha crouched beside the water unit, her back to him, cradling the half-empty canteen in her hands. She was drinking slowly, reverently. Her posture had changed again, less guarded, more centered. She looked grounded. like she was making peace with her own presence. The soft glow of the purifier reflected faintly off her purple fur, outlining her in an almost ethereal shimmer. Ren didn't speak. He just watched her, the way someone might watch a storm from a distance. Not with fear, but with awe. She turned suddenly and caught his gaze. For a moment, either of them moved. Then she whispered, "Thank you?" Ren sat up, resting his elbows on his knees. "You don't have to thank me." "I do," she said, "because you didn't look away." The next morning arrived as a thin, colorless light that barely made it through the haze-stained windows. Ren was already up, making a weak cup of synth-CAF and grumbling at the broken kettle unit, when he heard soft movement behind him. Not cautious, not scared, just quiet. Vasha padded into the room barefoot, still wearing his oversized shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She looked cleaner now, more alert. Her fur had dried into thick waves of violet and plum. She blinked at the sunlight peeking through the slats, shielding her eyes with one hand as though it still felt foreign. Ren offered her the cup wordlessly. She accepted it. He poured another for himself, then leaned against the workbench. "Sleep all right?" Vasha nodded faintly, blowing steam from the surface of her drink. "It was quiet. Not like I remember." "You remember quiet?" She tilted her head slightly, like she was measuring how much to share. "Once. Before." Ren didn't press. Instead, he gestured to the broken drone on his bench, an old orbital scout with one cracked optic and a half-melted logic core. "You good with tech?" he asked casually. Vasha's ears perked slightly. "Why?" "Last night," he said, "you were staring at that canister valve like it insulted your ancestors. Most people look at scrap and see junk. You looked like you saw its entire life story." Vasha approached the drone, setting her cup aside, and leaned in to inspect the core. "It's routed wrong," she murmured. "Too much draw from the secondary node. Whoever rewired this was afraid of it waking up." Ren laughed. "That would have been me. I've fried 2 of those before." She didn't smile, but her lips twitched at the corners. Just slightly. "Here," he said, sliding a tray of tools toward her. "Show me what I screwed up." She hesitated, only for a second, and then reached for the micro-welder with a grace that didn't match her condition. Her fingers were quick, precise. She stripped the panel, rerouted 2 wires, then tilted the power cell gently into its socket without a word. The drone flickered to life. A dim green glow pulsed through its central lens. Ren gave a low whistle. "Well, damn." Vasha leaned back, brushing her fur behind one ear. "I used to work on things like this." "Yeah?" he asked, not hiding his curiosity. "You an engineer?" "Sort of." Her voice faltered. "I was something else, too. Once." Ren didn't push. He just nodded. "Whatever you were, you're still something now." And for the first time, she smiled, small, unsure, but real. The hours that followed settled into something strange and unfamiliar for both of them: ease. Vasha stayed near the workbench, tail flicking slowly as she adjusted the drone's calibration and power distribution. Her hands moved with instinct, not just skill. She didn't fumble, didn't guess, she remembered. And that mattered. Ren pretended to work on a frayed filtration circuit across the room, but his eyes kept drifting back to her, watching how she moved. How her ears tracked the tiniest noises in the room. How she pressed her thumb against a circuit pin to ground it just right. She wasn't just fixing machines. She was finding herself again. And he didn't dare interrupt that. After a while, the silence stretched into comfort. "So," he said finally, leaning back with a grunt, "you ever think about staying here a while? At least until you've got your strength back?" She looked up, blinking. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," Ren said. "You're breathing. That's enough. Anything else is a bonus." Vasha tilted her head. "You help people often?" He snorted. "Hell no. People make things worse." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "But not me?" He hesitated. "Not yet." And for that, she gave him a full smile, not a smirk or a twitch, but something that glowed just beneath the surface of her violet fur and silver eyes. It hit him harder than it should have. Something in his chest clenched. "I'm not staying forever," she said, voice low. "I know. But I don't want to run." "Not today." Ren nodded. "Today's enough." Later, as they shared a meal, real food this time, not just rehydrated rations, but something he scraped together from a stash of root preserves and grain paste, Vasha sat closer to him. Not touching, not leaning in, but less like a stranger. When she finished eating, she reached out and touched the drone's side, trailing her claws across the newly fixed surface. "They used to make me build things," she said quietly. "Machines. Weapons. Interfaces I couldn't even name. Then they erased what I made. Erased parts of me." Ren looked at her. "But not all of you." "No," she said. "Not all." Her gaze slid toward the window. Outside, the haze was thick, but in the slant of failing light, he could see it, the boundary fence. The towers beyond it. The world that would try to tear her apart again, if it ever realized she was still alive. Ren followed her gaze. "If they come," he said, "it won't find you." Vasha didn't respond right away. But after a moment, she whispered, "They always come." That night, the wind returned. Not violent, but insistent. The kind that pressed through wall seams and whispered through cracks. A constant reminder that the outside world never truly slept. Ren double-checked the perimeter sensors out of habit, but deep down he knew they wouldn't help if someone really wanted to find her. When he came back inside, Vasha was curled up near the heater, not on the cot this time, but a blanket nest she'd made herself on the floor. Closer to the hum of the generator, closer to the water unit. Something about proximity to those things seemed to calm her. Ren moved quietly, making no effort to intrude. He sat back on his makeshift bedding with a ration bar he didn't really want, chewing slowly as he watched her from across the room. Her eyes were half open. "You don't sleep much," he said softly. She didn't deny it. "There's too much noise in the dark." He nodded. "I get that." A moment passed. "Why do you live out here?" she asked suddenly. Ren blinked. "Didn't think you cared." "I didn't," she admitted. "Until I did." He chuckled dry and low. "That's fair." He sat up, elbows on his knees. "After the collapse of Cauldron Line, I quit the Corps. Couldn't stomach the cleanup work. Too many screaming kids. Too many orders that didn't make sense. I started repairing refugee gear for credits. At some point I stopped asking where the gear came from. Or who died in it." Her eyes were on him now, glowing faintly in the low light. "I came out to Zone 12 thinking it'd be temporary. Just one last contract. But I guess I kept finding excuses to stay." She tilted her head. "Because it's quiet?" Ren nodded. "Because no one looks for people out here. And sometimes that's what broken things need. A place to go unnoticed." Vasha looked down at her hands, claws resting lightly against her thigh. "And me? Am I just another broken thing in your scrapyard?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "No. You're something worth fixing." Her breath caught, just a little. Her ears twitched once, sharply. Ren didn't move. Didn't elaborate. He just leaned back and closed his eyes. Vasha watched him long after his breathing evened out. Her fingers flexed once against the blanket. Then slowly, cautiously, she lay down again. And for the first time since she'd been dragged from the mud, she slept. The next morning smelled faintly of ionized dust and heated metal. The solar rigs had caught just enough charge overnight to power the lights without sputtering. Ren woke to the soft sound of movement, the kind that didn't belong to rustling cables or a failing turbine. Vasha was already up. She stood by the small mirror mounted above the wash station, combing her claws slowly through her damp fur. The shirt she wore was freshly cleaned, sleeves rolled to her elbows again, her tail swaying in slow arcs as she moved with quiet focus. She looked different today. Not just cleaner. Stronger. Her posture no longer slumped. Her ears were forward, alert. The silver in her eyes was clearer now, less clouded by fear or exhaustion. Ren pushed himself up and rubbed the sleep from his face, watching her from the cot. "Morning," he said, voice rough. Vasha glanced at him over her shoulder. "Morning." He raised an eyebrow. It was the first time she'd returned the greeting without hesitation. "You're up early. Didn't need more sleep," she said simply. "Didn't dream. That's either good or bad," Ren muttered, grabbing the kettle and setting it on the heat coil. "It's good," she replied. "I've had enough dreams for a lifetime." They shared breakfast, dry toast, crackers, and reheated stew, nothing fancy, and for once, there was no tension. Just the rhythmic clinking of utensils and the distant howl of the wind against the steel walls. After they finished, Vasha set her bowl aside and asked, "Do you have any more of those drones?" Ren paused mid-sip. "Yeah. I've got 2 busted scouts and a medical courier bot from before the treaties." "Why?" She stood. "I want to help fix them. My hands need to be busy." He nodded slowly. "All right. You pick." They spent the better part of the morning elbow-deep in wires and oxidized components. Vasha worked with silent determination, her tail twitching when a connection clicked or when a capacitor hissed unexpectedly. Ren mostly handed her tools and marveled at the precision in her movements. "You're fast," he said at one point. She didn't look up. "It's muscle memory. From before." He nodded. "Before what?" Vasha didn't answer, but her hands didn't slow. Instead, she said, "I used to be called a lot of things. Assistant. Acid. Prototype." Ren's brow furrowed. "They named you?" "They tried." "And now?" She finally looked at him, steady, sure. "Now I name myself." The drone sparked once, then let out a jittery chirp before stabilizing. Its central lens flickered to life, casting a pale green light across the table. Vasha leaned back, inspecting the results. Her fur was streaked with a few spots of grease, but she didn't seem to care. Ren grinned. "That's 3 for 3. I should be paying you." Vasha didn't smile exactly, but her ears twitched upward in what he was starting to understand as her version of approval. "I like fixing things," she said. "Machines don't lie." "No," Ren agreed. "They just break in ways that make sense." They worked in silence for a while longer. Outside, the wind had died down, leaving the outpost wrapped in an eerie kind of stillness. It was the sort of quiet that made the world feel paused, like the air itself was waiting for something. Ren caught her glancing at the window. "You expecting someone?" "No," she said, but her voice was less certain than before. "But the longer I'm still, the easier I am to track." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Do you know who's looking?" Vasha's expression darkened. Her silver eyes turned distant. "A faction that doesn't exist anymore. Not on maps. But their people still move. Quietly. Like rot." Ren exhaled. "You were theirs. For a time. And then? I ran," she said, simple and final. "I didn't even know I could. But my hands remembered things I didn't. I found a way out. Overrode my collar. Erased a trail." He nodded slowly. "But not completely." "No. Never completely." She looked at her hands, turning them over in the light. Scars ran across her palms, burns, perhaps from overloaded circuits or restrained shocks. Old, but not forgotten. Ren stood, walked over to one of the drawers beneath the workbench, and pulled out a narrow band of carbon fiber mesh. "Here," he said, offering it to her. "Wear this." She took it without question, letting the flexible material curl around her wrist. A plain accessory, but one that concealed a scrambling chip. "Won't stop a military sweep," he said, "but it'll throw off most scanners, especially if you stay inside the zoned field." Vasha looked down at the band for a long time, then up at him. "Why are you helping me?" Ren shrugged. "Because someone should have. Because I can." She stared at him, quiet, unreadable. Because you're not a machine, he added. You're not something broken. You're someone. And someone deserves a chance. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper.
There he is.
No one said that to me since I was taken. That evening, a warm gold light spilled in through the cracked overhead vent, tinting everything in the outpost the color of fading fire. The storm outside hadn't returned yet, but Rin could feel the pressure building in the air, like the whole sector was holding its breath again. Vasha sat on the cot, legs tucked beneath her, slowly running a small polishing cloth over one of the finished drones. She wasn't working, just holding it. Like it mattered more than just wires and plating. Like it was a piece of her, recovered and rebuilt. Ren was across the room, organizing spare parts into makeshift bins, but he wasn't really focused. His attention kept drifting back to her, how she moved, how she breathed now, calm and centered in a way she hadn't been when he first found her. How long have you been on the run? He asked, not looking at her when he said it. A pause. Almost 4 years, she replied quietly. I don't remember the exact number anymore. I stopped counting after I lost the last solar cycle calendar I had. You survived out there that long? I didn't live, she corrected. I hid. I crawled between systems, paid smugglers with broken data cores and scrap, slept in maintenance shafts and oxygen scrubbers. I was never safe. Just overlooked. Ren sat down heavily on the crate near the heater. And then Zone 12. Her jaw tightened. I was heading toward a salvage ship. I'd faked a manifest. I thought I could get off-world. Then someone recognized me. Someone from where you came from? She nodded. I don't think they knew everything, but they knew enough to be afraid. They told the wrong people. Or the right ones, depending on the side you stand on. Ren leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What side are you on, Vasha? She met his eyes, steady and unflinching. Mine. He smiled faintly. Good answer. She rose, placing the drone down gently on the bench, and walked over to him. Her steps were slow, quiet, but confident in a way they hadn't been days ago. She stopped just in front of him, close enough that he could see the soft pattern of fur across her cheeks, the subtle gleam in her silver eyes. I don't want to run anymore, she said. Ren looked up at her. Then don't. It's not that simple. Maybe it is. Just not easy. Vasha exhaled slowly. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides. I want to believe that. Then stay, he said. Stay here. As long as you need. As long as you want. And this time, she didn't hesitate. She nodded once. I will. They didn't speak much after that, didn't need to. The rest of the night passed in the quiet rhythm of shared presence. Vasha helped him realign a warp solar converter. Ren showed her how to run the old thermal scanner without tripping the fuse bank. They worked side by side like they had done it for years, not days. And then came the moment that changed everything. It was late. The lights dimmed. The heater clicked to its lowest cycle, and the generator hummed like a lullaby. Ren was seated at the edge of the cot, boot off, wrapping a minor sprain in his ankle from an earlier slip on the ladder. He winced as he pulled the bandage tight. You're doing that wrong, Vasha said. He looked up. She was standing there, arms folded, tail flicking behind her. Oh yeah? She stepped forward. Too tight around the joint. You'll cut off circulation. Ren opened his mouth to argue, but she was already kneeling before him, her hands brushing his aside with the kind of gentle authority that didn't ask for permission. Her fingers, deft, warm, covered in a light layer of violet fur, moved with precision. She undid his work and began rewrapping the bandage carefully. Not fast. Not sloppy. Just right. Ren stared at her, silent. Vasha didn't look up. I used to help treat injuries, she murmured. Before everything. Back when I had a team. When I had a name. You still do. She didn't reply. But her hands slowed. Finished, she sat back slightly, her knees still brushing his boots. Thank you, he said. For what? For not disappearing. She looked up then. Really looked at him. The way her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, it wasn't just the reflection of the console light. It was something else. Something alive. I thought I was gone, she whispered. But you kept looking. Ren reached out and brushed his fingers gently along the side of her face. Not possessive. Not commanding. Just there. Just contact. You were never gone, he said. You were just waiting to be seen again. Vasha closed her eyes, leaned into his touch. And in that moment, the distance between them, days, planets, moons, silence, collapsed into a breath shared between two people who finally understood the same language, quiet. The night deepened around them, and for once, it didn't feel like a threat. Vasha remained where she was, seated on the floor between his knees, leaning into his hand. Ren's fingers rested gently behind her ear, his thumb brushing the fur along her cheekbone. Her breathing was slow, measured, like the tension she'd worn for so long had finally begun to dissolve. She opened her eyes, and for a long moment said nothing. Then, "You touch me like I'm not dangerous." Ren tilted his head. "Are you? I don't know anymore." He let out a slow breath. "Well, if you are, you've had plenty of chances." Vasha gave a faint snort. It was barely a sound, more a twitch of amusement than a laugh, but it was something new. Something freer. "I used to scare people," she said. "Even before the collar. Before the labs. They didn't know what to make of someone like me. I was too fast, too quiet, too wrong." "You're not wrong," Ren said, his voice quiet and steady. "You're not a mistake." She shook her head. "They said I wasn't designed to last. That my mind would fracture. That I'd turn on the ones I cared about. They made me believe it." Ren leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees. "You haven't turned on me. Not yet. And I'm still not scared." She looked up at him, something unspoken shimmering in her expression. Something hesitant. Fragile. "Why?" she asked. "Because I've met real monsters," he said. "And none of them ever cried when the water was warm." Vasha blinked. Her breath caught. Then, slowly, she rose to her feet. Not rushed. Not retreating. She moved with the kind of grace that belonged to someone rediscovering the shape of her own body, stretching muscles that hadn't been allowed to feel comfortable for years. She walked over to the window. Outside, the world was still gray and broken. But in the reflection on the glass, her purple fur caught the low light, casting her in an almost luminous silhouette. Her tail swept the floor behind her in a lazy arc, relaxed for the first time since he'd found her. She stood there for a long moment before speaking. "You think there's a place left in the galaxy where someone like me could belong?" Ren joined her, standing beside her with only a few inches between them. "I think," he said, "you already found it." And for once, she didn't argue. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It breathed. It pulsed. It held shape like a bridge built slowly, plank by plank. Ren stood close enough to feel her warmth, but not close enough to crowd. That mattered. Vasha's eyes didn't leave the broken landscape outside. "The stars used to be clear where I grew up," she said softly. "There were nights you could see entire belts arcing across the sky. My brother and I would make up constellations. Name them after animals we'd never seen." Ren glanced at her. "You had a brother?" "Had," she echoed, her voice thinning at the edges. "He was taken before I was. I don't know if he made it out. Or if they even wanted him. I think I was the one they needed." He didn't speak. Just waited. "They tested my neural pathways when I was 13. I could interface with machine languages before I understood half the words in my own." Her voice drifted, more memory than dialogue. "They started calling me V07, short for Vishari Unit 7. I wasn't a girl after that. Just a system that walked.
Like, I don't
Ren's jaw clenched.
understand how
They
it
stripped your
gets
name.
smudged
I took it
when
back,
I'm just,
she
like,
said quietly,
holding
her
it.
fingers brushing the condensation on the glass.
Look, I'm not
She
even
traced a slow
holding
curve in the fog, then a line
camera.
beneath it. A shape. A symbol. Vasha. I made that name out of the old one. It's mine now. He nodded.
Like,
It fits. She turned to face him, standing straighter now. Her voice didn't waver. If they find me, they'll try to take it again. My name. My mind. Let them try. Ren said. Her silver eyes softened, and for a moment she seemed younger, less like a hunted fugitive, more like the girl who once watched stars with her brother. Would you fight for me? She asked, not as a test, but like she genuinely needed to know. Ren didn't blink. Without question. She stepped closer. And if it costs you this place? It was never the place that mattered. He raised a hand and gently touched her wrist. She didn't pull away. Instead, she moved into the space between them, close enough that her fur brushed his shirt. The heat of her body chased the cold from his bones. Then I'll stay, she said. I won't run. Good, he whispered. Because I'm not letting you disappear. And for the first time since she had spoken her name, she rested her head against him, not in fear, not in apology, but in trust. That night, the storm returned, not outside, but inside them both. Vasha sat cross-legged on the cot, her tail wrapped loosely around her legs. She was combing through an old diagnostic chip, fingers moving with quiet purpose, while Ren soldered a cracked panel across the room. They didn't speak for a long while, but the air between them felt charged, full of something waiting to be acknowledged. He finished the panel, set the tool aside, and turned toward her. She looked up, meeting his gaze. You're thinking loud again, she said. He smiled. You're getting good at reading me. I've always been good at that, she murmured, setting the chip down. It's just easier now that I'm not afraid of what I'll find. Ren stood and walked over to her, crouching to her level. And what do you find? She tilted her head. Someone stubborn. Honest. A little lonely. He chuckled softly. Not wrong. Then, quieter. What do you see in me? He expected hesitation, but Vasha answered immediately. I see a spark that refuses to die, even when everything around it has gone cold. I see someone who reminds me I'm still someone. Ren swallowed. His heart beat faster than it should have. She leaned in slightly. You've never asked what I'm capable of. You'll tell me when you're ready. I'm ready now. Her claws gently tapped her sternum. They made me for interfaces, living code. I can speak to systems without speaking at all. Reroute defense grids, hijack satellites, shut down fusion locks with a breath and a prayer. Ren's eyes narrowed slightly. That's why they fear you. Vasha nodded. Because I'm no longer under their control. She looked at her hands, then at him. But I can't build things on my own. Not really. Not the things that matter. You mean trust, he said. She nodded again. Or connection. Ren reached out, slowly, and took her hand. Her fingers curled around his like it was the most natural thing in the universe. He felt the pads of her palm, warm and soft, despite the past they bore. The spark jumped between them. She inhaled sharply, not from fear, but from surprise. Their eyes met, and this time, either of them looked away. You're not a weapon, he said softly. You're the lock they never meant to leave unguarded. And you, she whispered, might be the only key that doesn't try to own me. They didn't kiss, not yet. But the space between them shrank, filled with breath and meaning, until words weren't necessary anymore. By the next morning, something unspoken had solidified between them. Not romance, not yet, but gravity. Vasha moved through the outpost like she belonged there now, still quiet, still alert, but no longer like a visitor waiting to flee. She had started organizing the tools, repairing a stripped terminal in the corner, and patching wires Ren hadn't had time to touch in months. Ren watched her from the other side of the room, leaning on the frame of the solar calibration rig. "You do realize you're working harder than me now," he said, smirking. "I owe you back time. You don't owe me anything." Vasha paused, then gave a small, lopsided smile. "Then I'm doing it for me." She wiped her hands on a cloth, ears perked slightly. Her movements had changed, less defensive, more intentional. She was reclaiming her body, piece by piece, through repetition and small victories. They shared lunch, just dry rations with a hint of melted protein paste, but it tasted better now, somehow. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the company. As they ate, Ren studied her again. The way her tail twitched when she focused. The small way her nose wrinkled when something didn't taste right. She was made to look alien, but nothing about her felt that way anymore. "You said something before," he said, "about not being able to build things that matter." She set her food down and looked up. Ren continued, "But I think you are. Right now." Vasha tilted her head. "What am I building?" "This." He gestured around them. "Trust. A place. Something more than just surviving." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment. "You're different than anyone I've known. Probably less impressive." "No," she said firmly. "Because you never asked me to be useful. You let me just be." Ren shifted, his voice dropping. "Would you believe me if I said I feel safer when you're here?" Vasha didn't answer with words. She reached out, slowly, resting her hand against his chest. Just above his heart. Not searching, just feeling. His pulse was steady. "Real. You're not afraid of me," she said. "Not even a little." She leaned closer, just a breath between them now. "I think I'm afraid of not finding this again." He nodded. "Then don't lose it." And this time, when her hand slid down to lace with his, he didn't let go. That evening, the outpost was bathed in the soft violet hue of twilight bleeding through the clouds. Ren and Vasha sat near the window, their backs against the wall, legs stretched out, a shared blanket tossed loosely over them. The heater hummed quietly, a constant companion in the silence they now cherished. Vasha's tail curled around her hip, brushing Ren's leg with lazy comfort. She didn't seem to notice, but Ren did. Every small motion she made now was unguarded, instinctive. There was no more calculating distance. No more subtle shifts to stay ready to flee. She wasn't preparing to run anymore. "You think the world ever gets better?" she asked suddenly, eyes focused on the broken skyline outside. Ren took a moment to answer. "Maybe not all of it, but pieces of it do. One person at a time." She tilted her head toward him, thoughtful. "I used to think if I could escape I'd be free. That I'd find somewhere untouched. Clean. But everything's been touched by something. Maybe the trick isn't finding a clean place," Ren said. "Maybe it's making one." She looked at him, really looked, silver eyes tracing his face like she was reading a language etched in his skin. Then, without speaking, she reached out and gently brushed his jaw with her fingertips. The motion was soft, unsure, but deliberate. "You have a scar," she murmured. "Old injury. Shrapnel. Doesn't bother me anymore." She traced it with the edge of her claw. "I like that it's still here." "Why?" "Because it means you healed, but didn't hide." Ren's breath hitched slightly. The room suddenly felt smaller, warmer. "You're not the only one who lost things," he said. "I had a sister. Younger. Taken during the Marrow raids. I spent years trying to find her. I think, after a while, I stopped knowing if I was looking for her or for something to believe in." Vasha leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'm not your sister. I know. But I want to be someone you don't lose." He turned his face slightly, his cheek resting against her fur. "Then stay." "I am." No grand vow. No promises wrapped in heroism. Just two broken creatures, wrapped in warmth, willing to hold the silence for each other. For the first time in years, Ren felt like the noise outside the walls couldn't touch them. And for the first time in her life, Vasha didn't feel like a possession, or a mistake, or a prototype. She felt like a person. The days passed, quiet and full in ways Ren had forgotten were possible. They worked. They fixed things. They spoke less, but understood more. Vasha had stopped flinching at every power surge, every passing drone. She still listened to the wind, always. But not out of fear. Out of instinct. She knew the difference now. The quiet they'd built together didn't erase her trauma, but it gave her room to breathe. Ren had found himself waking up before the alarms, just to watch her sleep. She didn't curl away from the world anymore. Her body sprawled across the cot like it belonged there. Some mornings, her tail would slide across his chest, and she wouldn't pull it back. That morning, as the sun pushed through the haze and lazy beams, Ren was calibrating the long-range comm, purely routine, when a low ping echoed through the receiver. He froze. A signal. Encrypted. Military grade. Not a broadcast, but a scan. Shit, he muttered, fingers dancing across the console. Vasha appeared behind him almost immediately, silent but focused. What is it? A trace. Narrowband ping. Could be a sweeper drone. Could be something worse. Her posture changed in an instant, ears back, stance ready. The warrior she hadn't shown in weeks surfaced without hesitation. They're searching for something, she said. Not just a sweep. It's focused. Ren stood. It's not triangulated. Not yet. But they're in range. Could be old black sigil remnants. Could be worse. I need to go, she said quickly. Before they pull you in too. No, Ren snapped. We're not doing that. You don't understand. He stepped forward and gripped her shoulders gently, firmly. No. I do. And I'm telling you, we're not splitting. Not again. Not like them. Vasha's breath caught. Her claws curled at her sides. They'll kill you if they find out what I am. Ren's voice didn't waver. Then I'll lie better than anyone ever has. The calm chirped again. Louder. Closer. Their time was running out. Vasha looked at him, wild silver eyes blinking hard against the flood of emotions. You'd risk everything, she whispered. For me? Ren held her gaze. I already have. The silence after that admission wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. Dense. Charged like the air before a storm. Vasha stepped back, breath shallow, her claws flexing unconsciously. Her body wasn't trembling, but something inside her was. No one's ever said that, she murmured. Not without wanting something back. I'm not here to collect a debt, Ren said. You don't owe me anything. But you'd burn your entire life down for me. Only if I get to build something better from the ashes. The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite a grimace. You really are the worst kind of stupid. Yeah, he said. But I'm yours. Vasha exhaled slowly. Her tail brushed the floor behind her in slow, measured sweeps. We can't stay here. Not if they're this close. I know. Then we need to leave before they lock the grid. Ren nodded. I've got a backup rover. Buried in a decoy bay about 2 clicks north. Low emissions, short jump capable. We can take it off-grid. And after that? He hesitated. I know a place. Abandoned refueling station outside the Perith belt. It's mostly automated. No one monitors it anymore. Not even the scavenger syndicates. She stepped closer. That's not a future. No, he agreed. But it's a start. And after that, we decide together. Vasha's eyes glistened faintly. Not with tears. Just intensity. The weight of a choice she had never been given before. Together, she echoed. That's all I've ever wanted. She reached up, touched his face again, and this time it wasn't cautious, it was reverent. Like he was the only real thing left in the galaxy. I don't want to be afraid anymore, she whispered. Ren leaned into her palm. Then don't be. We'll run if we have to. We'll fight if we must. But either way, we don't go back. The comm console let out another pulse. closer, scanning directly over their sector. Vasha didn't flinch. She just looked at Rin and nodded once. Let's go. They moved quickly. Rin swept tools off the bench and stuffed only what they couldn't replicate. His encrypted drive, the drone Vasha had repaired, a pack of rations, a solar charge module. Vasha moved with fluid precision, scanning for anything that might give away their presence. She tossed the cotton mattress into the incinerator chute and dropped a thermal blanket on top. If they breach and scan heat signatures, she said, it needs to look like no one slept here for weeks. Already thinking like a ghost. Ren muttered, hoisting a duffel over his shoulder. I've had practice. The outpost door slid open with a hiss. Night had fallen hard. The sky was an angry smear of bruised clouds and dying starlight. In the distance, faint red beacons pulsed over the horizon, searchlights from a descending sweep drone. Ren pointed to the ridge beyond the compound. Rovers buried just past that rise. We go quiet, no lights, and stick to the terrain shadows. Vasha nodded, pulling a tattered scarf up over her muzzle. Her ears flicked once, twice, adjusting to the night wind. She looked utterly in her element now. Her violet fur blended with the shadows. She moved with the confidence of someone who had crawled through fire and memorized its rhythm. They slipped out into the dark. The wind howled low between the broken concrete towers. Ren led them through a gap in the boundary wall and across the scorched plain beyond. Vasha moved at his side, her tail low, her senses razor-sharp. Midway to the ridge, a sound stopped them. A chirp, subtle, coded. Ren dropped to one knee, yanking Vasha down with him. They crouched low behind a rusted water tank, barely breathing. A drone swept overhead, black and silent, its red scanner beams slicing through the mist. Ren whispered, "Signal trace?" Vasha shook her head. "No. It's blind sweeping. Looking for thermal spikes." He nodded. She touched his shoulder gently. "We move now. If it loops back, we're out of time." They crept forward. By the time they reached the rise, both of them were soaked with sweat, hearts hammering. Ren dropped to the ground and began unsealing a hidden panel, half buried beneath a mound of broken servos and camo netting. The rover activated with a deep hum. Old. Ugly. Fast. Vasha climbed in beside him. Ren started the engine. "You ready?" She looked at him, a slow smile forming across her muzzle. "I've been ready since the moment I stopped being afraid of living." He hit the ignition, and they vanished into the night. The rover cut through the darkness like a whispered promise, low to the ground, silent but swift, kicking up ash and dust in long, curling trails behind it. The searchlights behind them grew smaller, less focused, but neither Ren nor Vasha relaxed. Not yet. Not until they were beyond the kill grid. Ren kept one hand steady on the wheel, eyes scanning the ridgelines. Vasha sat beside him, her tail wrapped loosely around her hip, watching the sky. Her ears tracked the sound of every gust, every distant thrum. "How much further?" she asked. "Another hour, if we keep off the main causeways." "Will it be enough?" "It'll have to be." They rode in silence for a while, the hum of the rover's engine the only sound between them. Eventually, Ren spoke, not looking at her. "You know, when I found you, when I pulled you out of that sludge, I thought maybe I was just doing my part. Patching another broken thing so I could feel useful again." She turned her head toward him. "But it wasn't like that," he continued. "You weren't broken. Just buried. And now I think I found more of myself in you than I ever expected." Vasha didn't answer right away. Then she leaned her head back against the seat and said softly, "When you first touched me, I thought it was the end. That maybe I was about to vanish for good. But you didn't claim me. You didn't fix me. You saw me. That's the part they never prepared me for." He glanced at her, eyes sharp in the glow of the dash. "I don't want to lose that," she added. "You won't." "A beat. Promise?" she asked, barely above a whisper. He reached over, took her hand in his and squeezed. "Yeah," he said. I promise. She didn't smile, but the tension eased in her shoulders. She let out a long breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Then let's get to that place, she said. And if it doesn't exist, we'll build it. He finished. They rode on, deeper into the night, farther from the past, closer to something that still had no name. Not safety. Not home. Something harder. Something better. Hope. Just before dawn, the landscape changed. The jagged ruins gave way to low, flat plains veiled in silver mist. Far in the distance, a broken spire jutted from the ground like a rusted tooth. The remains of an old relay station. Their destination. Ren pulled the rover into a slow curve and brought it to a stop behind a ridge of scorched shale. The horizon was beginning to glow with the faintest hint of lavender, mirroring the hue of Vash's fur. This is it, he said. Automated station. No organic scans. Barely any power left in the grid. No one's used it in years. Vasha stepped out, tail flicking, eyes scanning the horizon. It's quiet. Too broken to be valuable. That's why it's perfect. She walked a few paces forward and crouched in the dust, running her fingers through it. It smells like dry metal. No blood. No chains. Rin came up beside her. We'll patch the roof. Reroute power. Make it livable. Vasha looked up at him. We? He nodded. You're not running anymore. And I'm not letting you rebuild a life alone. She turned back toward the station, standing fully upright, her silhouette outlined by the emerging light. For a moment, she looked like a ghost standing on the bones of forgotten machines. But she wasn't a ghost. She was here. Real. Solid. Chosen. They entered the station together. Inside was dust, old wiring, and the bones of forgotten code. It smelled of neglect, but not violence. Vasha moved through it like she had always known it, flipping breakers, reconnecting dormant subsystems with quiet confidence. The station responded to her like it had been waiting. This place will hold, she said. At least for a while. Ren dropped the bag by the central terminal and glanced around. Good. I'm tired of losing things. Vasha met his eyes across the room. You won't lose me. He walked over, slow and sure, and when he stood in front of her, she placed her hands flat against his chest. You saved me, she said. Ren shook his head. No. I just gave you time. You saved you. She leaned in and kissed him then, soft, slow, and without fear. There was no uncertainty in it. No desperation. Just the warmth of two people who had learned, against all odds, how to choose each other. The kiss lingered. When it broke, they stayed close, foreheads resting together. This isn't a hiding place, she whispered. This is the start of something. Ren smiled. Then let's start. 3 days passed in that forgotten station on the edge of nowhere. The repairs were slow, but deliberate. Together they patched the roof, rerouted solar wiring, and stripped out the broken auto-defense systems that hadn't worked in a decade. Vasha overhauled the terminal's core, wiring in new encryption layers from memory. She didn't ask for instruction. Her fingers simply knew. Ren reinforced the entrance, adjusted the thermal regulators, and salvaged what he could from the rover before dismantling its traceable components. When he caught her watching him with a quiet, thoughtful expression, he didn't say anything. He just kept working, and she kept watching. By the fourth night, the station hummed with a quiet warmth. The lights weren't bright but steady. The air was dry and breathable. The stars, dim and fractured by upper atmosphere haze, still found a way through. Vasha stood outside the hatch with a blanket over her shoulders, arms crossed, tail swaying gently in the breeze. Ren came up beside her, offering a steaming tin cup. Rude tea, he said. Barely palatable. She took it, sipped, and made a face. I've had worse. He chuckled. Figured you had. They stood in silence, looking up at the broken stars above them. No drones. No signals. Just quiet. You ever miss who you were? he asked finally.
It's like
Vasha
my
didn't answer right away.
cheeks, they
Then,
glow
I miss who I could have been,
blue,
but I don't mourn who they tried to make me. Ren
but,
nodded slowly. You ever think about going back?
normally
Showing
a
them what they lost?
darker teal.
She looked over at him, her silver eyes soft but sharp. No. That's not peace. That's just revenge with better lighting. He laughed. Fair enough. She turned toward him, blanket pulled tighter around her shoulders. This, right here, it doesn't feel like survival anymore. Ren leaned his shoulder lightly against hers. That's because it isn't. It's living. She nodded slowly. I want more of it, she said. You will have it. Vasha looked back up at the sky. Her ears flicked gently in the wind. You think the stars still remember us? I think they're watching, Ren replied. Just waiting to see what we do next. She smiled, not a small smile, not a fleeting one, but wide, full, real. And then she said something that made Ren's chest tighten. I'm not afraid of tomorrow anymore. The morning light came softer now. No alarms. No fleeing. No searching for exit routes. Just the slow rhythm of a place where no one else came. A place where they had time. Ren woke to the sound of humming, low and steady. He blinked against the amber light filtering through the cracked skylight and turned toward the source. Vasha sat cross-legged on the floor, a half-disassembled transmitter in front of her. She was soldering a new coupling into place, tail lazily flicking behind her, one ear tuned toward the doorway in automatic vigilance. She wore one of Ren's older shirts, sleeves rolled up, collar loose, and grease smudged across her cheek. She looked peaceful. Not hidden. Not hunted. Just here. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. You sing when you work? She paused, then glanced at him with a smirk. Apparently. Wasn't sure that was a thing you did. It wasn't, she replied. But now I can. That answer hit him harder than he expected. He stood and crossed the room, kneeling beside her, letting his hand rest against the floor near hers, not quite touching, but close enough to feel the warmth. Vasha didn't look at him. She kept working, but her voice lowered. I keep wondering what I'm supposed to be now. He tilted his head. What do you mean? I wasn't raised to become a person. I was trained to become a tool. I keep thinking maybe I'll wake up and this will all be gone. That I'll go back to being something built for someone else. You're not going back, Ren said gently. And you're not something. You're someone. She finally looked at him. Then what comes next? Ren considered the question for a long moment. Then he reached behind him and pulled out a small device, the one she'd helped him repair a week earlier. He set it between them and powered it up. A small projection flared to life, a basic schematic of the surrounding sector. A map. One with no names, no routes. Just possibilities. We make the future ourselves, he said. Not all at once. Not with answers. Just choices. One at a time. Vasha stared at the flickering display. Then she picked up a stylus and drew a soft line along the edge of the map. There, she whispered. That's where we'll go next. He smiled. Together? She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly. Always. Weeks passed. Not marked by danger or escape, but by habit, comfort, and laughter in soft doses. Vasha built new routines. She calibrated the hydro unit to feed the seedlings when planted. She repaired the relay station's long-range antenna but refused to reconnect it to the galactic net. We'll speak to the stars when they have something worth saying, she joked. Ren let her take over the workbench. She let him braid her hair. They slept curled together under patched blankets, their bodies pressed close not for warmth, but for the sheer miracle of being able to. No more flinches. No more tension. Just breath. Just skin. Just peace. One evening, Ren found her standing outside again, staring at the sky. The stars were clearer tonight, unobstructed by smoke or patrol sweeps. He joined her wordlessly, his arm wrapping around her waist. You think they'll ever come? She asked. Maybe, he answered. But they'll find an empty signal. We've burned the past behind us. She leaned into him. I don't feel like something running anymore. You're not. I feel free. He smiled.
Okay.
That's because you are. They stood there in silence, the world around them nothing but wind and distant starlight. Then Vasha said, They tried to turn me into a weapon. And failed, Ren replied. No, she said softly, glancing up at him. They succeeded. But I chose what I aim at. He laughed. And she smiled. Because it was true. The galaxy was still broken, still burning in places. But here, on the edge of nowhere, something real had taken root. Not just survival. Not just safety. Love. Earned. Quiet. Unshakable. And for the first time in a life that had never really belonged to her, Vasha knew. She wasn't a tool. She wasn't a fugitive. She wasn't lost. She was home. With Ren. And this time, no one could take it from them.